The difference between wealth and character has never been more evident than in a Providence courtroom on an ordinary Monday morning, when an extraordinary collision occurred between entitlement and justice. Richard Ashford, CEO of Ashford Development Corporation, walked through those courthouse doors believing his $1.8 billion net worth granted him immunity from the rules that govern ordinary citizens. Judge Frank Caprio was about to teach him the most expensive and most valuable lesson of his privileged life. This is the story of what happens when unchecked arrogance meets unwavering principle, when a man who owns half a city discovers he can't own respect, and when 50 hours of washing dishes becomes worth more than $1 billion empire. Monday morning, 9:45 a.m. Providence Municipal Court. The bailiff's voice cut through the courtroom chatter. Case 16-294, Richard Ashford, violation of traffic control device. Through the double doors strode a man who didn't simply enter. He made an entrance. Richard Ashford, early 50s, looked like money incarnate. His Ermenegildo Zegna suit was tailored so precisely it could have been sewn onto his frame. The Hermes tie cost more than most people's monthly grocery bills. His shoes, Italian leather polished to a mirror shine, reflected the courtroom lights with every step. Diamond cufflinks caught eyes across the gallery. But it wasn't the expensive clothes that announced his wealth. It was the attitude, the casual arrogance of someone who'd spent decades getting his way through checkbook diplomacy and economic intimidation. Outside, 3 members of his entourage waited. His Bentley Continental sat in the parking structure, one he owned, naturally. This was supposed to be simple. A red light camera ticket, 5 minutes, write a check, move on. He had investors flying in from Dubai. Important people. Important business. Not like this trivial inconvenience. Judge Frank Caprio glanced up from the file before him. At 77, he'd presided over thousands of cases, developing an almost supernatural ability to read people within seconds of meeting them. What he saw approaching his bench triggered decades of judicial instinct. This wasn't going to be routine. "Good morning, Mr. Ashford." "Morning." Not "Good morning, Your Honor." Not even a respectful nod. Just "morning," as if greeting a colleague at a coffee shop rather than addressing a sitting judge. Judge Caprio noted it, but proceeded professionally. "Mr. Ashford, you're cited for running a red light at the intersection of Westminster and Weybosset. The red light camera captured your vehicle, a 2024 Bentley Continental, proceeding through the intersection 1.3 seconds after the light turned red. Do you recall this incident?" Richard pulled out his phone, checked something with casual disinterest, then looked back up. "Not specifically. I drive through dozens of intersections daily, but I'm sure it happened. Your cameras don't lie, right?" "The evidence supports the citation, yes." "Great. So how much do I owe?" Richard reached into his jacket and produced a leather checkbook, actual paper checks, as if it were 1985. The gesture was almost theatrical in its dismissiveness. "Let's settle this so I can get to my 10:30 meeting. I have investors flying in from Dubai and they don't wait." Judge Caprio's expression remained neutral, but something flickered in his eyes, the first warning sign that Richard Ashford was about to make a very expensive mistake. "Mr. Ashford, this isn't about settling. This is a court hearing to determine." "With all respect, Your Honor, I know how these things work." Richard's interruption was smooth, practiced, the tone of a man accustomed to cutting people off. "I ran a red light. I'm guilty. I'll pay the fine. Let's not waste each other's time with theater. You tell me the number, I write the check. We both move on with our lives." "Mr. Ashford, the fine for a red light violation is $85. However—" "$85? Richard laughed, genuinely laughed. "Your Honor, I spend more than that on lunch. Let me write you a check for $500. Consider it a donation to whatever fund you have. Traffic safety, courthouse renovations, whatever. Judge Caprio's voice grew noticeably firmer. Sir, I don't accept donations in lieu of following proper legal procedure. Richard sighed heavily, like a parent dealing with a difficult child who refused to understand simple concepts. Look, I understand you have a process. I respect that. But I'm a businessman. Time is money. My time is worth approximately $12,000 per hour based on my company's annual revenue and my working hours. That means every minute I stand here costs me $200. Can we expedite this? The courtroom was watching this unfold with growing discomfort. Was this man actually trying to buy his way through a court hearing? Mr. Ashford, your hourly rate doesn't change court procedure. Everything has a price, Your Honor. Everything. I've been in negotiations my entire life. There's always a way to make things move faster if you're willing to pay for efficiency. Judge Caprio set down his pen deliberately. Mr. Ashford, let me be clear. This court doesn't operate on your timeline or your financial principles. We operate on the law. You'll participate in this hearing like every other citizen who appears before me. Richard's smile faded slightly, replaced by something colder. I'm not every other citizen, Your Honor. I employ over 2,000 people. I pay more in taxes in one quarter than most people earn in a lifetime. I sit on 5 corporate boards and 3 charitable foundations. My company is worth $1.8 billion. I think that entitles me to a little flexibility in how we handle an $85 traffic ticket. Judge Caprio leaned back, studying Richard with the careful attention of someone reading a complex text. Mr. Ashford, your financial success is admirable. Your employment of 2,000 people is commendable. But none of that gives you special treatment in this courtroom. I'm not asking for special treatment. I'm asking for efficient treatment. There's a difference. Efficient treatment is what everyone receives here. You're getting the same process as the person who came before you and the person who will come after you. Richard's patience, what little he'd possessed, snapped audibly. Your Honor! Do you know who I am? Richard's voice rose slightly. I don't mean that as arrogance. I mean it literally. Do you know what Ashford Development Corporation is? I'm aware of your company, yes. Then you know I develop commercial real estate throughout New England. Office buildings, shopping centers, luxury condos. I've built half of downtown Providence's skyline over the last 20 years. He gestured vaguely toward the window. The building 3 blocks from here? Mine. The hotel across the street? Mine. The parking structure where I parked my Bentley this morning? Also mine. I am aware you're a significant property owner. I'm not just a property owner. I'm an economic engine for this city. When I build a project, it creates hundreds of construction jobs. When I lease space, it generates tax revenue that pays for schools, roads, police, courts. He paused, then continued despite knowing he was entering dangerous territory. People like me keep cities like Providence running. Judge Caprio's expression hardened, almost imperceptibly. People like you, business leaders, developers, entrepreneurs, the people who take risks, create jobs, generate wealth. We're the ones who make everything else possible. I see. And where do people like me fit into your worldview, Mr. Ashford? Richard realized too late that he'd walked into a trap, but his ego wouldn't permit retreat. Your Honor, I didn't mean any disrespect. I'm just saying there's a hierarchy to society. Some people create value, and some people maintain systems. Both are necessary, but one is more economically vital than the other. So judges maintain systems, and billionaires create value? In simplest terms, yes. You enforce laws that people like me operate within. It's complementary, not competitive. Judge Caprio's voice dropped to just above a whisper, and somehow that quiet tone commanded more attention than any shout could have. Mr. Ashford, would you say I work for you? Richard hesitated. Every survival instinct screamed that this was dangerous ground, but his arrogance propelled him forward anyway. In a philosophical sense, yes. My taxes pay your salary. The economic activity my company generates funds the court system. So in that framework, you could say public servants serve taxpayers. And I'm one of the largest taxpayers in Rhode Island. The courtroom fell into absolute silence. People were holding their breath. So, because you pay substantial taxes, you believe I serve you? I believe we have a transactional relationship. I contribute to the system financially. The system provides services. That includes law enforcement, courts, infrastructure. You're part of that service infrastructure. Judge Caprio nodded slowly, his expression unreadable. Service infrastructure. Interesting term for the judicial branch of government. Your Honor, I'm not trying to offend you. I'm being honest about how the world works. Money funds everything. Without taxpayers like me, there is no court system, no judges, no bailiffs, no public defenders. None of it exists without people creating wealth and paying into the system. So, we should be grateful? I didn't say that. But it's what you meant. That judges, police officers, teachers, all public servants, should be grateful that wealthy taxpayers like you allow us to exist. Richard's face flushed. You're twisting my words. I'm simply stating economic reality. Wealth creation enables public services. That's not controversial. That's basic economics. And then he said it, the sentence that would change everything, the 5 words that would cost him $5,000 and 50 hours of his life. Look, Your Honor, I don't mean to be rude, but I own people like you. The words hung in the air like a physical presence, toxic and undeniable. I own the buildings you work in. I own the roads you drive on. I own the economy that makes your salary possible. So can we please just finish this transaction so I can get back to actually creating value? For 5 full seconds, Judge Frank Caprio said nothing. He simply stared at Richard Ashford with an expression that could freeze fire. When he finally spoke, his voice was quiet, but carried like thunder across the hushed courtroom. Mr. Ashford, did you just tell me you own me? Richard realized too late the magnitude of his mistake. I didn't mean it literally. I meant economically. You said, and I quote, I own people like you. There's no economic interpretation that makes that acceptable. Your Honor, I apologize if that came out wrong. I was trying to illustrate. You were trying to remind me that you're rich and I'm not. That you create value and I merely maintain systems. That you own buildings and I merely work in them. That your time is worth $200 per minute and mine is apparently worthless. That's not what I... Let me tell you something, Mr. Ashford. Judge Caprio's voice carried the weight of 3 decades on the bench, of thousands of defendants, of a lifetime dedicated to the principle that all people stand equal before the law. I've been a judge for over 30 years. I've seen billionaires and I've seen broke college students. I've seen corporate executives and homeless veterans. And you know what I've learned? Money doesn't determine character. Power doesn't create wisdom. And wealth absolutely does not buy respect. Richard had gone pale. Your Honor, I sincerely apologize. I was out of line. You were more than out of line. You were contemptuous. You walked into this courtroom believing your $1.8 billion exempts you from basic human decency. You treated this hearing like a business transaction where you could simply pay your way out. And when I didn't immediately bow to your financial superiority, you told me you own me. I didn't mean... Stop talking. Richard's mouth snapped shut. Judge Caprio opened his computer and began typing, slowly and deliberately. The courtroom was so quiet you could hear people breathing. Mr. Ashford, the standard fine for running a red light is $85. That's what you came here expecting to pay. But we're not in a standard situation anymore. He looked up, making direct eye contact. Under Rhode Island General Law 813, judges have discretion to enhance penalties when defendants demonstrate contempt for judicial authority or when their behavior suggests disregard for public safety and the rule of law. Your behavior today has been textbook contempt. Richard's hands began to shake. You've referred to court proceedings as theater. You've attempted to expedite justice by offering to overpay. You've suggested that your time is more valuable than court time. You've stated that public servants exist because wealthy people allow them to exist. And you've told a sitting judge that you own him. Your Honor, I'll pay any fine. I'll donate to any cause. Just please. Your fine for the red light violation is increased from $85 to $5,000. The courtroom gasped collectively. Richard's face went white. 5,000? For running a red light 1.3 seconds late. No, 85 for the red light. 4,915 for contempt of court. That's insane. You can't charge me $5,000 for speaking honestly about economics. I'm not charging you for speaking honestly. I'm charging you for contempt for treating this court like a business transaction, for suggesting that money exempts you from respect, for telling me you own me. Richard's voice rose dangerously. I apologized for that. I said it came out wrong. You apologized after you saw my reaction. That's not remorse. That's damage control. This is an abuse of judicial power. I'll appeal this. My lawyers will... Please do appeal. I encourage it. Because every appellate court in Rhode Island will review the video of you telling a judge, I own people like you. I'm confident they'll uphold my ruling. Richard tried another tactic, desperation creeping into his voice. Your Honor, I employ 2,000 people. I have a company to run. I have investors, clients, obligations, and I have a courtroom to run with rules that apply equally to everyone, billionaire or broke, real estate mogul or unemployed single parent. In this room, your $1.8 billion means nothing. Judge Caprio wasn't finished. But Mr. Ashford, I'm going to do something else. Something I rarely do. I'm going to teach you a lesson your money apparently hasn't taught you. He made more notes in the computer. In addition to the $5,000 fine, I'm ordering you to complete 50 hours of community service. Community service? I'm a CEO. I don't have time for... You'll make time. You told me your time is worth $200 per minute, so 50 hours of your time equals $600,000 in value. Consider it a donation to the community you claim to support. Richard was shaking with rage now. Where exactly am I supposed to do this community service? I'm assigning you to Providence Community Kitchen. They serve meals to homeless individuals and low-income families. You'll work in the kitchen, serving food, cleaning dishes, taking out trash, whatever they need. You're assigning a billionaire to wash dishes. I'm assigning a man who needs humility to serve people he's clearly never noticed. Maybe spending 50 hours with people who struggle to afford meals will teach you that human value isn't measured in dollars. This is humiliating. No, Mr. Ashford, this is accountability. Judge Caprio signaled the clerk. Mr. Ashford, you have 30 days to pay the $5,000 fine. You have 90 days to complete your 50 hours of community service. Failure to comply will result in a warrant for your arrest. Do you understand? Richard could barely speak. Yes. And Mr. Ashford, one more thing. The judge leaned forward, his voice carrying the full weight of his life's experience. You mentioned that you own the building 3 blocks from here and the parking structure where you parked your Bentley. You implied that your property ownership gives you some special status in this city. Let me tell you what you don't own. He paused, letting the silence build. You don't own justice. You don't own respect. You don't own the rule of law. And you absolutely do not own the people who dedicate their lives to public service. Judge Caprio's voice softened slightly, becoming more personal. I grew up in a working-class neighborhood. My father was a tailor. My mother cleaned houses. They taught me that a person's worth has nothing to do with their bank account and everything to do with their character. Your character today was lacking. Richard nodded, humiliated, unable to make eye contact. You're dismissed. I suggest you get to your Dubai investors meeting, though I imagine it'll be hard to focus knowing you're now $5,000 poorer and facing 50 hours washing dishes. Richard Ashford walked out of that courtroom, past rows of people, some smirking, some satisfied, all of them having witnessed something extraordinary. Outside, he immediately called his attorney, screaming about appeals and judicial overreach. His lawyer pulled up the courtroom video, watched Richard say, "I own people like you," and responded flatly, "Richard, if you appeal this, every news outlet in America will cover it. You'll become the poster child for entitled billionaires. Pay the fine, do the service, and never speak to a judge like that again." 3 weeks later, Richard showed up at Providence Community Kitchen for his first shift. He wore jeans and a polo. Still expensive brands, but at least an attempt at blending in. The kitchen manager, Maria, a 62-year-old woman who'd run the facility for 20 years, looked him up and down with an expression that suggested she'd seen everything and was impressed by nothing. "You're the billionaire the judge sent?" "Yes, ma'am." "You ever worked in a kitchen before?" "No, ma'am." "Then you'll be on dishes. Follow me." Richard spent 4 hours washing dishes, scrubbing pots, taking out garbage. His hands got wrinkled. His back ached. He watched hundreds of people come through, families, elderly folks, veterans, people who looked just like anyone you'd pass on the street, but who needed help affording meals. During his break, he sat outside on a concrete step. A homeless veteran sat down next to him, lit a cigarette, and studied Richard for a moment. "You're that rich guy from the news, right?" "The one who told the judge he owns people," Richard winced. "Yeah, that's me. That was stupid." "Yeah, it was." The veteran exhaled smoke into the cool air. "You know what, though? You don't own dignity. Can't buy that. Can't sell it. Either you have it or you don't. Today you didn't have it. But you're here washing dishes, so maybe you're learning." By his 20th hour of service, Richard was different, quieter, more thoughtful. He noticed people now, learned names, asked about their stories instead of checking his phone constantly. By his 50th hour, the final shift, Maria pulled him aside. "You surprised me. Most rich people the judge sends quit after 3 hours. You finished. You showed up every shift. You worked hard. Maybe you learned something." Richard met her eyes. "I did. I learned I was an arrogant fool who thought money made me better than people. It doesn't. I'm sorry it took a judge destroying me to figure that out." 6 months later, Providence Community Kitchen received an anonymous donation of $500,000. The donor note read simply, "For food, supplies, and dignity." From someone who learned respect the hard way. Maria knew exactly who sent it. Richard Ashford walked into Judge Frank Caprio's courtroom, worth $1.8 billion. He left $5,000 poorer, 50 hours of labor committed, and infinitely humbled. He learned that courtrooms are the ultimate equalizer. Your net worth doesn't matter. Your property portfolio doesn't impress. Your tax contribution doesn't buy special treatment. He learned that telling a judge, "I own people like you," costs exactly $5,000 plus 50 hours of your life. But most importantly, he learned what his billion-dollar empire never taught him: that respect cannot be purchased, that dignity is not a commodity, and that the people who maintain systems often hold more power than the people who own buildings. The story spread through Providence's legal community like wildfire. Other judges shared it. Attorneys told their clients. Court officers recounted it to anyone who would listen. It became a cautionary tale about what happens when wealth eclipses wisdom, and when one principal judge refuses to be bought, intimidated, or owned. Richard Ashford's 50 hours washing dishes taught him more about humanity than 50 years of business success ever could. He discovered that the homeless veteran who showed him how to properly scrub a pot had more grace than he'd displayed in his entire adult life. He learned that the single mother serving food alongside him worked harder in one shift than he'd worked in months, not for profit, but for purpose. And he realized that Judge Frank Caprio hadn't destroyed him that day in court. The judge had saved him from himself, from a life where money replaced meaning, where power substituted for principle, where ownership masqueraded as achievement. You can own half a city's skyline. You can employ thousands of people. You can generate billions in economic activity, but you cannot own dignity. You cannot buy respect. And you definitely cannot own a judge. That's a lesson Richard Ashford learned the hard way, and one he'll never forget.